Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Film Gamer Podcast. This is episode number 25, third season, episode 18. So let's get to it. Today, we are going to look at a couple of things. First of all, an acknowledgement of the later date. I usually update when it comes to the box office. However, we had a couple of things going on and I decided to just roll with it because it was boring, not a lot of exciting stuff happening, and Fallout just came out yesterday, so I got through half of that, and CinemaCon, which is kind of like the E3 but for theater owners, just came out, so it's forgivable. Well, this will be a quality episode. We're going to be talking about Netflix's Ripley, Fallout from Amazon Prime. It'll be more of a TV centered episode, why I'm switching streaming services, as well as react to the Joker 2 trailer, and some other things about YouTube content updates, and as well as, celebrity news and great television shows that I haven't watched yet. And I wanted to shout out to the DeSousa family who convinced me to keep going with my podcast solo because I usually like to talk when I have guests, but this will improve my skills and gives you more episodes. So thank you, Rachel, for the encouragement to go solo, and Eric for the ongoing encouragement. I really appreciate it. Oh, and I'll get to a letter if I have time. So I wanted to start off with a show that I was watching called Sugar. This is a contemporary noir thriller set in LA where nobody uses their phones. Seriously, what is this garbage? Now, the show comes from a reasonably strong pedigree. Mark Protosevich. Never heard that name in real life. He was a writer on I Am Legend, and he also wrote The Cell, which is pretty sci-fi. And I believe he's the creator and showrunner. He hired Fernando Meirelles, who directed City of God, a really well-reviewed movie, which I thought was pretty decent. And then he did The Two Popes, which I really, really liked for Netflix. So he's almost kind of overqualified to do this show, but that's how Apple does it. They always get somebody super overqualified to tell a mediocre story. And why do I think it's mediocre? Well, to start, it starts in black and white, and they're speaking Japanese, and this is like a contemporary show set in LA. And this bizarre streaming thing, representative of the world that we're in right now, where I really feel taken for granted as a viewer. Just because it's like, hey, you're already subscribing to our streaming service. What are you going to do? You can't change the channel, or you likely won't change the channel. It's just kind of a different viewing habit, I guess. But as a junior millennial, borderline Gen Z who's 30, it annoys me that you have a private eye who is just palling around LA like it's the 50s. Nobody is taking, phone calls or on their phone. I woke up today and I thought to myself, how long can I live my life today without looking at a screen? And that lasted all of 2 minutes before I wrote the script for this show. If I had a job, I could do it, but I likely would have to look at an LED screen anyway, so this is my job right now. By the way, I heard on CBC that LEDs with their blue lights do more than just keep you up at night. They might emit soft radiation that long term gives you kind of health problems. Problems that we don't really know about, but my entire generation and younger probably whines about on their LED screens. I don't want to start spouting, X gives you cancer and blah, 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 because I can't be bothered to look back on the study or interview and be specific about it. It's just one of those things like, hey, alcohol is bad for you, don't drink, and then everybody drinks. So it's just kind of like an interesting thing that I wanted to bring up because I use a lot of LED screens. Fortunately, right now, my main TV is an LCD. But it's interesting to me because I don't know. It's something I'll have to look into. So if you're interested in me bringing more of that up about health tips, but the screens that you watch, I can get legit about it. But right now, I'm just kind of like office worker, hey, I heard about this. So yeah, if you're buying a VR headset, I guess get the MetaQuest 3 because that uses LCD technology, which is really cheap, rather than the Apple Vision Pro or PSVR 2, which Digital Foundry also recommended the MetaQuest 3 over those two because it was more visually consistent and had less stuttering because the OLEDs, which is seen as the top premier visual technology in terms of screen displays, is so sharp that the faults are easier to see in its presentation. So, right now at CES, they revealed this new technology called micro LEDs, which corrects a lot of those issues. But it seems to be an LED based health issue that this doctor guy was talking about on the CBC. So it's just one of those things like keep a lookout for because the future is low tech, you know? And, I guess that loops back around to Sugar. It's a show that I watched the first two episodes and I could have binged the whole thing, but it wasn't available. They're doing week to week, which to me defeats the purpose of streaming. Okay, the reason we wanted to get into streaming was because Netflix, boom, they drop all the episodes at once. A couple of times now, Netflix does the week to week thing. For the most part, they're still mostly into the streaming, and the people who have lost the streaming wars, the HBOs, the Apples, the Paramounts, they still do week to week because they want to spread out their content. Amazon kind of splits the difference on it. They kind of have a good system where new IPs like Fallout come out all at once. Mr. and Mrs. Smith came out all at once. But like repeated stuff they do week to week. But if you ask me, it just kills the pace of it. Okay, how many people were watching The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel past season 3? I doubt that many because they switch to week, and it's just kind of like you lose track of it because you get used to watching something all at once and all of the story is fresh in your mind. But if you're going to do week to week, you have to have commercial breaks. You have to have the previously on, and we're kind of in this no man's land where streaming is looping back around to cable, and they're doing some things of their own, and then trying to harken back to cable the other way. Like Fallout has a lot of commercial breaks in it, like where it just fades to black and comes back, but there are no commercial breaks on it, so it's kind of weird. And then of course they drop that all at once, and then you have something like Sugar, which has no commercials except at the beginning when you watch on Apple TV, but it goes week to week. So like perfect example. I was talking to my dad about what the twist is in Sugar that all of these trade magazines, Little Gold Men spoke about it of like, oh, it has this crazy twist in it, and like the way that he was speaking, this guy on this blog was like as if the twist had already been revealed by episode 2. But no, I don't think it has. And I read an article by Alan Sepinwall for Rolling Stone where he spoke about, the trial with all of these streaming shows now, where citing a tweet that somebody said about surfing Dracula, is that you have basically a season where it finds out about how Dracula got his surfboard, and then there's maybe 5 minutes of surfing Dracula at the end. And that's really what shows are. Halo with season 2 just finished right at the part where the video game Halo starts, and that's just the perfect summation. And that's why I mean when streaming services are taking it for granted. So don't be surprised if like Sugar ends up getting canceled or something, and people go on, oh, what a terrible show that it was canceled. Yeah, because they wasted the audience's time. They took us for granted, and people were like, oh, audiences they're all ADD and they want the immediate satisfaction and they have no patience. It's like, no, they just don't want their time wasted. Like, I came to watch a Private Eye show. Anything analogous to that, analogous, I don't know, that's a word that I've only ever seen read. I haven't heard it said out loud. But anything in the peripheral of that, I'm not interested in. I came to see what the show promised. I don't care about backstories, and that's why I don't like The Bear, because The Bear is a show where it takes an entire season for them to figure out what to do with the restaurant and to name it The Bear. and to me, it was honestly a waste of time. I'll be finishing the second season, which is better soon, but it was one of those shows where people just went on and on and on about how great the show is, and I don't. It's just I don't get it. I'll just finish it because I have that nagging thing in the back of my head of like, oh, I should watch that. I should watch that. So I will. But I haven't picked it up since I'd started season two and was like 15 minutes from the end of the episode, and then my brother came for a visit. And I turned it off and never turned it on again. So yeah, the streaming system is broken. Shows should be binged. Fallout has commercial breaks with no commercials. New IP originals require binging. So if Apple is wondering why its shows aren't hitting, and they're not hitting pretty badly, I saw a report that more people browse Reddit by the minutes than people who watch Apple TV programming, which costs 10 to 100 times, probably even 1,000 times more than, blog posts that I write on Reddit. So I'll tell you, Tim Cook, because you aren't allowing me to binge bad shows you can finish before you find out it's horrible. It's like watching a Christopher Nolan movie, and there are some bad ones, I won't say which, but you consume multiple hours of it, and by the time you're finished with it. You figure out the plot holes, it's a week later. And all you can remember about the show were the happy memories you have. So do that, Tim. You're in the service business, not the content business. Apple TV Plus doesn't need to spread out its content week to week and offer something every week like Netflix. No, it needs to offer great service so when that content does arrive, it's complete and it's ready. And that means all episodes are out. So yeah, moving on. Let me take a sip because I heard breaks are good. I had to reheat my tea because I let it too long. Sherry Redstone, the head of Paramount Global, soon to be David Ellison's company, maybe. Ooh. If it gets sold, uh, according to shareholders who would prefer Apollo Management, who I don't want because they will massacre it. They'll divide Paramount up, sell pieces of it piece by piece, and goodbye movie studio. Honestly, if you're wondering, I am ditching Paramount Plus. That is a streaming service that I currently am subscribed to. The reason I got it is to watch Halo when season one was out, Scream 5, which looked good, and it was good, one of my favorite movies of that year, and Jackass Forever, and The Lost City, even. Um, and looking at that, you can look at it and say, well, they're not making any more of that anytime soon. Halo Season 2 finished, and we are long past the days where a show would come out 6 months after its season ended. That's gone. I'm gonna have to wait 2 years before Halo Season 3 even starts, and it might even be longer because, again, taking its viewers for granted. Um, that show is muddy anyway, and it's a 6 out of 10 show. Only because I'm a Halo fan do I watch it. Um, anyway, Scream 7 was supposed to be made. The Scream I mentioned was Scream 5. They pushed out a sixth really early, and they managed to get it because Spyglass is very cheap, and they're so cheap that they don't hire the cast. Nev Campbell, who was Sidney Prescott in the whole Scream series, didn't appear in the last one. Why? Because they didn't pay her what she's worth. And then Melissa Barrera, who was the lead, Jenna Ortega played her younger sister. She was the lead in the Scream movies, and what happened was they fired her. And it's funny, they don't seem to have these problems with male cast members, the heads of Spyglass. It always seems to happen with female cast members, and I wonder why. Um, but in defense, I will say Scream is a female-led franchise and always has been. But speaking en masse to the entire industry, every time there's a pay dispute, unless it's like $1 billion franchise and it's the lead actor asking for more, Um, it's like, come on, like, and the guys usually get what they want, and the women don't. Perfect example. Kirsten Dunst spoke about being in the Spider-Man movies, and Tobey Maguire before Spider-Man 1 was an absolute nobody. I'd never even heard of him. And to this day, he's still known as Spider-Man. If you watch any other movie trailer on YouTube with Spider-Man in it, or sorry, Tobey Maguire in it, all of the jokes will be about Spider-Man. You watch Pawn Sacrifice, every single comment will be a Spider-Man pun. It's hilarious. So the guy is Spider-Man. He's not really his own actor. In real life, he's part of Leonardo DiCaprio's posse. Um, and, that's his whole life. Good for him. He gets a lot of money. But it's generous because Kirsten Dunst pointed out she was in Bring It On. Like, she was an established actress. She was a hit. How much did they pay Tobey Maguire? Way more than they paid her. And you can be like, oh, well, the role is important. But it's like anybody could have played Spider-Man. There could have been 10 other people. It was frequently pointed out at many, many times that it could have been Jake Gyllenhaal. So if it could be Jake Gyllenhaal or it could be Tobey Maguire and there was no difference, and that was almost the case with Spider-Man 2, you can look it up, then they really shouldn't be paid as much because how many people could have played Mary Jane the way Kirsten Dunst played her? Maybe a few, maybe you could find some, but for actresses at that right age, she was good in it and she was established and she should have been paid more. But, that's the end of that. Because it seems these executives are just particularly spiteful, um, and all cast members are. They fire cast members for posting on their Instagram stories, which, by the way, personally I would never do because stories in my millennial brain are a soft post. They're not hard written. I know people can screenshot them all, and I know that the world has changed, but it opens up a can of worms. I mean, similar to Gina Carano on Star Wars, she posted basically something where she said that conservatives today have it as hard as, and I'm paraphrasing a lot here, as Jews during the Holocaust. And that, of course, is a big no no, and it's a pretty stupid, privileged thing to post. Um, today, Disney filed to have the lawsuit dismissed because it's Gina Carano is currently with being backed by Elon Musk, suing Disney for wrongful termination, I guess, or sexism. It's kind of like a grab bag of whatever they can get, that she was fired improperly. Um, and what's crazy to me about this happening, and let me just drink the tea here for a second. um, is that her character on Star Wars, there is no big cliffhanger on her character. Her character comes and goes whenever the plot allows. There aren't big questions hanging over about her identity or anything. So she's just a background player who wasn't asked back. But the way that everybody seems to be very upfront about this is like, yeah, no, she was fired. So the fact that this could have been done or taken care of basically behind the scenes and wasn't, to me, is very telling because this didn't need to be a big story, but nonetheless, it's a story that has to be that has to be hashed out and talked about, I guess. So that's where we're at in the industry there, where Disney is saying no, this has to be dismissed. We did fire her because of what she posted online, and I have to say, I'm definitely not sympathetic to what Gina said because it's idiotic, and there's a idea that we should be sympathetic to when people post something stupid online because it could be anyone. But what I've noticed about the people who do get that kind of stuff is that and get fired over that kind of stuff is that they're usually a whole lot richer than me. Um, and they're a whole lot privileged than me. They're a whole lot older than me. Um, and they're a whole lot dumber than me. All people being equal. So it's like somebody gets canceled. Oh, yeah, it could happen to anyone. And, I think even if everything that I ever posted online, and I'm certainly not asking for this to happen, if everything that I ever posted online got revealed, um, I wonder, would I be canceled? And I don't think so. Don't test me, please. But some of the things that the people say, the degrees of, I wouldn't say sexism because that's not really attributable, but like gross racism or unfair things that they say about other people. Um, they just like, I would never make a historical comparison between me and World War II just because that's like, it's an obvious metaphor to make. Like World War II is the most popular thing that has happened to the history of the world in the last 100 years. So it's not a particularly clever reference, really. So and it's so broad, it doesn't really illustrate a point very well. But I digress. So, anyways, finishing up with the legal estates, Paramount is trying to get sold right now to another company, and there are two that are up. One is Apollo Management, which I mentioned briefly. They are sort of like a private venture capitalist firm, and basically they're all about the money. They're what they would do is kind of like a common sense thing where it's assumed that if they bought Paramount, all of Paramount, which includes all of their TV channels, they own CBS, that's their main asset. They also own Nickelodeon and BET and a whole bunch of IP, Mission Impossible, Top Gun, all that. Um, anyways, if they were purchased, all of their assets, and we're talking 100-year-old company, um, they their studio lot. They own very valuable land from 100 years ago um, in Hollywood, California, which is the most expensive real estate in the world. They would sell it, and that would be worth about $10 billion. They have a really nice Hollywood studio lot. They would sell that to somebody or divide it up and make it into condos, likely. So that's 10 billion right there, and they're offering 25, and then you can get into the IP and all of that kind of stuff. Like, oh, we're gonna have a Mission Impossible spin-off show, and da 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 da, and it's just dollars on cents. And what the current head of the company, which is a family-owned company, Sherry Redstone, her father was Sumner Redstone, who ran it for a long time, and his lasting legacy was he separated and brought together and then separated again eh, the CBS and Paramount before Stoddard brought it together. They had a bitter fight over it because he wanted it separate and she brought it together. And in the 5 years since she has brought it together, their stock price has dwindled to like 10 or $12 or $13. It's worth about double now because they're looking at prospective buyers. Um, but basically, there's this big management fight right now where she wants to sell it to another family company, Skydance, run by David Ellison, who has a father named Larry Ellison, who owns Oracle and is a billionaire. And fun fact, he has a sister. David Ellison has a sister. Um, they're both the children of Larry. She has Annapurna Productions, which you might have seen on some artistic films and video games. And she's in it for the art, but her art doesn't make as much money, so they've since completely switched over to video games. Annapurna Interactive. Meanwhile, he has Skydance, so they've had development deals with like Tom Cruise. They also did Annihilation with Alex Garland, and people are very attracted to him buying it because it's backstopped this potential sale by his father, who's one of the richest people in the world. So, you know, no loss of money there. There's always going to be money there, but the shareholder votes don't like it because they basically ignored Apollo Management venture capitalist offer, which many say is more generous because um, they she wants doesn't want the legacy of Paramount that's 100 years to be completely erased. She wants another family to take it over, which, dare I say, I'm not the biggest billionaire friendly guy, but I appeal to the idea of giving it to another family, like a person, rather than a company. So Sherry, I hope that goes through. Although four board members are walking away, um, apparently from the board or threatening to resign. One of which is our lawyer because they're saying the due diligence on this offer isn't being properly explored. If she sells and Paramount has a dual share structure where essentially one person, Sherry, being a family owned company, owns 77% of the voting stock, but only like a minority amount of the actual company. Just she owns the majority of votes, but a minority of the company. And that holding group that she has, which controls the voting rights, is only like 10% of the company. It's a weird, complicated sale. And basically, the way that they're trying to do this sale now with Skydance is where they would buy Skydance for about $5 billion, and then they would come in through the middle or internally, and then kind of rise up somehow, and that's how management would go. When really what should happen is that Skydance should buy Paramount for like $30 billion or something like that, which I don't think they have the money for, and that's the issue. But it's basically the way that the merger should happen is that like the person who wants to take over should buy it, and that makes the most sense, and buy the whole company. But the issue is that only the voting shares are being rewarded this way, and the people who own all the actual stock, the actual weight to the company, aren't being rewarded. So that's unfair. And I really hope they work out the issue because my main concern, as was the case when Disney bought 20th Century Fox, is that if it gets sold to somebody who doesn't like making movies, then we all of a sudden have less movies. And that's not good because they make high quality movies, and I want that to continue. I want movies that push cinematic boundaries. Artistic movies are good and fine and all, and they help people learn the cinematic language, and they do cool stuff that major movies steal from. But the issue is that if there are less movies, then people watch less movies. If people watch less movies, then they go to the movies less. If people go to the movies less, then the economy, a major pillar of it, crumbles, and then our culture changes more to internet-based, humor, which is more prone to interference. So it's like less American or North American. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on corporate takeovers. So, um, what I would do if I were Paramount and we're taking it over is just, there's the Jackass stuff and Johnny Knoxville stuff. People have really warmed up to that series because the people have come of age and grown up with the series. They have some stuff in development, but it's nowhere near revealed. So the studio hasn't really properly grown that as a franchise. Like, should be a new TV show. There should be new cast members, or just do something different, entirely different with Johnny Knoxville. Say, what else do you want to do? Let's do something. So that's one asset that hasn't grown, and then you have them not retaining the talent of Radio Silence. Now, granted, Scream is owned by Spyglass, and they're distributing with Paramount, but um, the people who made Scream 5 and 6 went on to where else? Universal. And now they have a movie coming out called Abigail. That was a quick turnaround for a movie. And when you look at the resume of these people, they made the movie Ready or Not with Fox, Searchlight of all people, on a budget. It looks great. I didn't like the movie a lot, but it looked great and it was a hit. And it's a very contained thriller. And then they do Scream, gets franchise best reviews, honestly, which is really tough to do. And then they have a year essentially to sprint and do Scream 6, and that becomes the series' biggest grosser ever. So if you're Paramount, why aren't you like, well, we want to be in business with these people because they're consistent? They end up doing a movie at Universal called Abigail, which comes out in 2 weeks on the 19th. Again, there are two places to release horror, basically. there is April, and there is October. And then there's, as well, the first week of January. And then there's maybe the third week of July, because that's when The Conjuring came out. You can have a scary movie occasionally in the summer, which we'll do. This isn't night and day, black and white, hard and fast rule. But I'm just saying, 1 week in January, the opening week, and then, I don't know, maybe you could have something on Valentine's Day, but if a good movie is out, people will see it, and it's marketed reasonably well. But it's basically April, and then October, and then a little around October you can do Labor Day or post-Labor Day in that slot. But for the most part, that's when horror works. And I've always found that it's like April, because old school, when movies would come out in theaters, they would come out on DVD 6 months later around October. So Abigail comes out in the middle of April, and it's funny because I fought with Scott Menzel on this on Twitter about when movies come out, horror movies come out, and what he did was that he might have taken the right argument of saying you're wrong, horror movies come out all the time, here's all approved ride, but what he did was he took every title of a movie that sounded like horror, like Love Lies Bleeding, and then put it on Twitter to see this. And then he got ratioed because people looked up, well, actually, this isn't a horror movie, this, that, the other thing, so. I was right. Anyway, what else is happening? The Need Brothers, I mentioned I got Paramount for The Lost City, which was the Sandra Bullock movie. They are working on a Lego movie. Guess where that's at? Universal. The only people who, grow talent. They got Universal, has Steven Spielberg, they have Christopher Nolan, they had M. Night Shyamalan, they have Jordan Peele, who just released Monkey Man for them. Now, it's unfair to compare Paramount to Universal, because Universal is owned by Comcast, a cable company who operates 10 times the size of Paramount. And Paramount does have a band of toxic executives, excluding you, Sherry, which viewers would know more about if they listen to the Town podcast with Matt Bellany, that have really crimped that movie studio. Like, Paramount used to be up high, and they've gone low because of executive mismanagement. So hire me, Sherry, Will Hume, as a condition of the sale. I have a university degree. I'll turn it around. My parents told me I can do anything with a university degree if I got one, so I did, and now I'm jobless. Ripley is a TV show that was developed by Showtime, a division of Paramount, and for whatever reason, oh yes, I remember the reason. Paramount announced that they're getting rid of their Showtime channel and blending that with Paramount Plus. So what happened is Ripley got canceled with them, and they had to shop it to someone else. Who did they shop to? Netflix. Netflix, who picked up You, which was a big hit because it was actually weirdly done by Lifetime. Was like the first good TV series that they ever did. And they said, oh, we're going full in on crappy Hallmark movies. And that's going to be our business. So we don't really have the ability to make good stuff. So Netflix was like, fine. And it's been a hit then. And they're going to have one more season of that show, You. But this is kind of their new You. Which is funny because You is inspired by Dexter, which is, of course, inspired by Ripley, and the talented Mr. Ripley made into a movie. This is a straightforward adaptation of the novel on which that movie was based, which came out in 1955. It was written by Patricia Highsmith, who also did the Hitchcock film Strangers on a Train, the other Hitchcock film Rebecca, Carol, and a lot of other stuff. She's kind of a noir artist, apparently a controversial figure in real life. But anyways, Netflix are the kings of resurrection. And Paramount was short-sighted on it. Just like they were with Yellowstone, where they sold the streaming rights, even though they had streaming service coming out to another group. If I were an executive at Paramount, I'd be like, oh, who's doing this Ripley show? Steve Zalian? Oh, what's his resume like? Well, he did write Schindler's List and won an Oscar. And then he went to HBO and he did The Night Of, and that was very well received. And those are two absolutely bulletproof, no dispute, very, very good things. You have a movie and a television show. And how heavily is he involved? Oh, he's writing and directing every single episode. Well, of course it's going to be good then. Like, even, I'm not crazy about searching for Bobby Fischer, the movie they made, but it has its own cult following at The Ringer. People love that series. So, to me, of course, like, I get it, of course, but it's like they go ahead with another Showtime developed series, Halo, and they axe this when this is a much better show than Halo. Now, granted, Ripley did test my patience. Sorry, I've had this cough for months. Haven't gotten over it at all. Scratch that. I did get over it, and then I got it again. Because, family moved in, close quarters, and my dad had the cough. I got the cough again. That sucks. More of the story is I need a real job. Anyways, so why am I switching streaming services? Well, I mentioned the reasons that I got it. I got Paramount Plus for those things that I mentioned, and those things are gone, and there isn't something taking their place. And the other thing is Paramount keeps upping its prices, and they just announced to me that they're upping their prices again, and it's as high as Disney Plus. And I just don't want to pay that because Paramount Plus is the most inferior streaming service that there is. The reason for that is that they stutter. They stutter a lot. They're expensive. They're like $12 a month now. And their bit rate is gotta be sub 20 or something like that. Apple's bit rate is about, around 45 megabits a second. Netflix is down to 20, but it's really stable. But Paramount, Amazon a little bit, but Paramount most of all is stuttery. And then on top of that, they'd never get the subtitles right. I watched Halo. I don't know about you, but I don't speak the alien language. And for whatever reason, subtitles on Paramount Plus shows never work. So on Netflix, they always do. Honestly, a little too well because you watch a show on Netflix. Like if you were to go watch the Wages of Fear remake that they did, it would be dubbed in English, and you would not notice until like 20 minutes in if you didn't know it was a French movie right away. Because English is the default. I always prefer to watch something in its native aspect, that is the language that it was spoken, with English subtitles if necessary. And Paramount just, I guess, doesn't get that. They don't, like, the subtitles never work, and I've reached out to Paramount about this issue, and they're just kind of like, well, we're in America, so we don't have anybody to fix that for you. So, won't be bothered. I thought about thinking about writing a letter to Paramount to tell them, hey, big fan, but I gotta go. This is why I thought you should know, because I love being direct. If I can directly say something to you or somebody, I will absolutely get my message across, because communication is paramount. So yeah, I watched Ripley. It tested my patience. It doesn't get going until like the second episode, and it's a very, very straightforward adaptation, or so it seems, of the novel, which makes the movie that Matt Damon was in all the more impressive. But it was solid. Formula executed quite well. So yeah, overall, I give that, I give it a yay. A total yay. Why is this not working? I always get confused when I want to center the camera. But yeah, overall, I'll give Ripley a 7.8. It is reasonably well paced, although it demands patience. And fortunately, I didn't have anything else that I was enjoying to see. Um, so, um, if you're looking for a show to watch, watch Ripley. It is very similar to the movie, um, but does a few things differently, and it's very square. It's very about itself. Of like, we're just telling the story that's on the page. Toss in, it understands the themes. It presents those themes in a very plain way, but because it's based on a closed book story, adapting the first of about five novels, it's a reasonably satisfying show. Um, so that's what I will say about that. Let's see if I can pause this right here. Right here says Fallout on it, or if I can go that low. Yeah, I can't. Or can I? Eh. Difficulties of doing TV, video, audio all at once. TV eventually, yes. This t shirt that I'm wearing right now, I got at a midnight launch of Fallout 4, which was just announced to get an update just in time for the television show, which I've gotten halfway through on Amazon Prime. And it's okay. You can tell that the game makers, Todd Howard, were heavily involved with this series because it gets the vibe correct, and the characters are interesting. The tone is correct. The only thing that's missing is that it should be funnier, and that's not surprising because Jonathan Nolan, as crafty as he is, being Christopher Nolan's brother, co-writing Interstellar, which is getting a re-release, by the way, this year for its 10th anniversary, and has oddly grown in estimation. Weirdly more than Inception. It seems Inception kind of was there for a few years, and then people have really come back on the warmth of Interstellar. And Jonathan Nolan kind of brings the human nature aspects to it, because that's kind of his fascination. Memento was based on his short story, which Christopher Nolan adapted, and he co-wrote The Dark Knight, and you see like the people rising up in The Dark Knight Rises, which Christopher Nolan recently said is like an underrated film of his. Um, and then you have Westworld, which is all about human nature and stuff like that, and kind of went up its own rear end a bit there, but nonetheless, Jonathan Nolan is a crafty guy. Him and his wife Lisa Joy, and the thing is, though, is that the show is missing humor. It doesn't have a sense of humor. All the trailer beats telegraph the all the best parts in terms of humor, but the show is definitely lacking because I'm just kind of watching it. I'm like, this is good, but it should be funnier. Like it should essentially be a full blown serial comedy, um, or black comedy or surreal, because that's just the tone that the game apes. And I, for one, though, wanted to celebrate because I downed the first 4 of 8 episodes, and I'm happy that they came out as one. Thanks Amazon for that. And it's just so funny that MGM, who has a long history as well, has a studio of making movies over like 100 years. It's funny how they are the ones that are making Fallout, which is like very gamey. Like I remember in 2008, during the golden age of video gaming, um, I had made a vow to beat Fallout 3 before the new year ended. And the new year, it came down to the new year, and I'm like, you know what, I'm not going to rush it. I was sprinting through, like, I was speed running it practically. And I say, you know what, I'm not gonna rush through it. I don't want to take the last hour of this game and cram it just for something. So it came down to the new year and I stopped. And I picked it up a few hours after the new year, and I literally only had like 5 minutes left of it, not even. So I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have crammed. If you're gonna cram, commit, because you're still completing it. And if you're gonna take your time, take your time. Don't ever split the difference. It's like Ron Swanson says, don't half-ass one thing, full-ass another thing. Um, Fallout New Vegas, which came out afterwards. I've put more hours into that game than I have any other game, and I didn't even play the DLC actually, that much. I still think about firing it up and starting it again. So I played through Fallout. I remember when I decided to get it. I found the Game of the Year edition for $20 in a basket in Shoppers Drug Mart, and I got it. Contained all the DLC. Awesome. And that month was the month that Friends dropped on Netflix, and I of course had seen the tail end of Friends, like the last two seasons, with my mom watching it every week. But I'd never seen the whole show myself, so I watched it. I binged it entirely in 1 month, all of Friends, and really liked it. Matthew Perry, shout out to another Canadian, and he had a voice in Fallout New Vegas. He was the bad guy, Benny. And so I had a Matthew Perry month, basically, in January of third year, so that would have been around 2015. So I always appreciated that. That was the perfect melding of, watching something, television, and then switching to video game and playing, and that was like, next to binging the first two seasons of Game of Thrones on November 1st, 2012, and just sitting on my butt eating like 2 to 3 kilograms of candy and nothing else. And because I was young, I was about like 19, I didn't feel crappy afterwards. So that was fun. Good times. Now when I sit on my ass, it hurts. um, so Fallout is on Prime. It has the humor down, but in a time where The Bear is winning Best Comedy, this is kind of where we're at, because the comedy isn't there anymore. Like, I'll mention CinemaCon. Aziz Ansari has a new film out. I say new film because he started to make one film, and then there was the pandemic, and then he had made the mistake of hiring Bill Murray, who got fired, and that derailed his whole movie. And then he's in development on another now. And somebody on Twitter asked, Bill Brasky is his name, I wonder if Aziz's time has passed. He had Master of None season 1 and 2, which I consumed in university, and I really greatly enjoyed it. A wonderfully romantic series. And then I watched the first episode of season 3, and again I think it came week to week, or maybe I just didn't want to watch it, and I stopped. Why? Because it was in black and white and 4:3, and just for those of you out there, if you're a filmmaker and you do not want somebody to watch something, make it in black and white in 4:3, because I guarantee you half of your audience will be non-existent. So there's a filmmaking tip right there. I know people want to make statements, but like, this is an entertainment business, okay? So like, don't complain that nobody watched your season 3 of your show when it was a spinoff, when it was black and white and 4:3. But I digress. He made that show and then had the bad luck with his movies, and he did a few stand-ups. I think he did 2 for Netflix that were okay, but he was kind of, the most thing people remember him for is on Babe.net. He during the Me Too height of like October to January 2017, 2018, a woman had a bad date with him and kind of told on him. And it was in a tough situation because you had like Bill O'Reilly the month before, and then Harvey Weinstein, and then Kevin Spacey, and it was rolling down the hills right there. And a lot of people's names were dropped. Charlie Rose was another one. Matt Lauer was another one. There was the Billy Bush, Donald Trump. They were all getting dropped, and appropriately so, because people talk about being canceled. it's not so much cancellation, it's accountability. Like, these are people who, if in addition to that, if they were well liked in the industry, which they were up until many of them were up until that time, but if they were well liked and still had great relationships with these people and their talent, then I do not think that it would have their stories would have panned out the way that they did. I remember somebody who handled an attempted Me Too. I don't like using it like just throwing it off like that, but Michael Douglas had an assistant who had said bad things about him, and he came across and he said, you know, I copped to some of the language, but the actions I never did, and he responded to it in a way that showcased like innocence, like I acknowledge this part, I throw away that part, which is a small part, and the problem with a lot of these apologies is that with Woody Allen, for example, there's always like a element of denial in their non-apology, um, and people have kind of gotten used to it. It's kind of become a language of like, well, you know, you get accused, you do a half-assed apology, you do an apology tour, and then business as usual. That's just basically how it's happened. I mean, look at Justin Trudeau in blackface. You know, he came out that he was doing blackface, absolute apology. You know, down on his knees, begging, crumbling, humbling himself. You know, embarrassingly so for many people. Not for me. I don't think so. I enjoyed it. Not enjoyed seeing somebody on their knees, but just how he was kind of a comeuppance, a deserved comeuppance, and he like humbly got through it. Again, as somebody who didn't vote for Justin Trudeau, in terms of the cultural comeuppance, he handled it with as much grace, I guess, as he could. I don't know, but yeah, you don't need to like Justin Trudeau for that. I'm just using him as an example of like somebody who, you know, you have to see somebody get down on their knees and show that they are in a weakened position and be vulnerable, because what they're being accused of is taking advantage of somebody else in a vulnerable position. So if you demonstrate equality by like getting to choose to humble yourself and putting yourself on your knees and saying, I am sorry, I made a mistake, that is what people want to see. That is what people respond to so that they can move on. But, you know, if you spend the rest of your career denying, like, well, I never said that and it wasn't like this and this, then it's just like a denial. It's like a fly that you have to swat away. You have to attack it, you have to direct yourself to it, and, you know, you have to say, this was presented to me. This is how I'm going to respond to it, and like deal with it in a complete way. I can do another episode on this because it's a whole longer issue. But as for the Aziz Ansari bit, if the movie that he is making comes out and it is funny, nobody will care. You know, it's like Anthony Jeselnik says, you know, nobody's going to go after you for making something funnier. But if you try and, you know, make yourself seem like a hero or a victim, then, you know, that's just not what the entertainment business is interested in, you know, unless it's in a movie. You know, people want to see real mistakes, real humbling responsibility taken, you know. And I think that if Aziz Ansari learns from this, which I'm kind of, I wonder if he has. I think it'll be demonstrated in his work. I honestly do. But he has a movie coming out later this year, and it's comedy. Seth Rogen is in it. It's kind of like a slice of life comedy. So you know, with the state of comedy that we're in, we'll see where it's at, and hopefully it's good. For those of you who don't know, CinemaCon is like the E3 of movies, where movie theater owners are shown what the movie studios have cooking. And it's just like a convention where, you know, they're showing a lot of footage of movies, and here's what we have on our slate and to be excited for. They're going to bring people in. And the star of the show is the Joker 2 trailer, which is just filled with spectacular image after spectacular image. I didn't like the first Joker, but it looked very good and was well crafted. The story was incredibly slow, and all it had to say was taken from other movies. Martin Scorsese referred to it unnamed in an interview that he did, where it was a movie that he just turned off because it was too similar to his own work. And I watched just before this, as a refresher, the lowest form of art, that is the movie trailer reaction. Why is that the lowest form of art? Well, because uh, real rejects. Why I hate trailer reactions and they're the lowest form of art is because the cannibalization of our culture. Just like when you're reacting to something that somebody else did, it is not your thing. It is someone else's thing that you are sort of taking credit for. So with Joker 2, it's kind of fitting because Joker steals from other better movies, more interesting movies, and presents it in as best as anybody could. But then you have people reacting to a thing that's like, they're pointing out a reference to, they say Singing in the Rain. It's actually a French film with the four colored umbrellas and stuff. And another point out to Real Rejects is they say Zazie Bates. It's Zazie Beats. I do not know where the guy is getting Bates from. It's, you know, especially in this culture, we read a lot more than we say, and we type a lot more than we speak. And we try and dress things up. And I'm guilty of this too. And especially trailer reactions on my previous or even this current channel. I have reacted to trailers. And why? Because it's quick, it's easy, it's sturdy. And people want to respond to it. They want to. We're not close face to face anymore. We're living in a digital world, so people want to share with others, and the way they do that is looking up, well, how did somebody react to this? And we look up on YouTube to see how another human reacted to the trailer. It's kind of weird. I mean, I watched the trailer with my dad. My mother doesn't watch trailers, so, next time I see somebody in person, when's that going to be? And that's a friend of mine, next week. Why wait until next week to see what somebody thought when I can just look on and see what somebody else said? I just wish they could strip away the trying to sound smart and that kind of thing, because I don't buy any of these YouTube reactions or reaction to anything anytime I see it, because they are, when you set something up, you're preparing for it, and when you're preparing for it, you have expectations and you want to know what to say, like, oh, this is a reference to, um, this French movie, and you want to know what that French movie is because you want to inform the audience, but it's then not a real reaction because you're looking, you're seeing, and then you're finding out, and then you're spitting it back to them. So, the true reaction is a feeling. It's not words, it's feeling. And that often isn't communicated in trailer reactions, and that's why I don't like them. And again, it's referring to someone else's work. And when you do that, it just kind of leads to the cannibalization of culture. But hey, that's showbiz. We're all cannibals. So, moving on. Any other trailer roundups at CinemaCon? Not that I was shown because I didn't go. It takes place in Vegas. I wasn't invited. I'm not that big yet. But another trailer called Speak No Evil, which is a remake of a European film by James Watkins, who did Eden Lake, The Woman in Black, Bastille Day, aka The Take with Idris Elba and Richard Madden. He is a decent director. He's a pretty decent director. And I will watch it. But the trailer didn't look that interesting. It's just another cabin by the lake kind of type thing. In this case, it's just like a cottage in the British countryside. An American family visits with a British family, and it's just one of those, oh, this, we're doing this thing which is supposed to be nice, but these people are being weird, and we're too polite to say anything, and that's like the whole movie. And I'm just not interested in those kind of horror movies, because, like, if the whole plot is just telling somebody to shut up and leave right away, then, it's not fun to see me watch somebody be polite and, beyond all measure, and then you know it's a horror of manners, basically. And it's like, what are we doing here? Like, that's not fun to me to watch something like that. And I feel like most of the engaging media now, in entertainment, it's not like entertainment that makes you feel good. It's entertainment that like you relate to, but in a negative way. And that's just, it's not fun. Um, yeah, it's coming out September 13th again in that post Labor Day slot that I talked about. James McAvoy is in it. Mackenzie Davis is in it. James McAvoy was in It Chapter 2, which, fun fact, was written by Mark Pertosevich, who wrote Sugar. So, looping it all back around there. And in the post Labor Day release slot where I mentioned horror movies open well. I, for one, think that movies, especially if you're making a sequel to something, which Joker 2 is, coming out on the same date as the original, if you're making a sequel to a hit movie, have it come out on the exact same release date years later, okay? Audiences have muscle memory. Even if they don't know themselves consciously, there's a feeling of like, ooh, we know this. Now, it's different if the studio picks like a stronger release date, preferably one that's less crowded. Um, a good example is Star Trek. Star Trek 1 came out second week of May. Star Trek 2 came out like third or fourth weekend of May. And then a Star Trek 3, and I'm referring to the Prime trilogy of Star Trek Into Darkness, and Star Trek Beyond, came out in the middle of July, um, during a super crowded month that included like a newborn movie and stuff like that. And it didn't do well. It didn't do well because it opened to less than half because it had like 10 other movies opening at the same time when the previous movies were like the second big movie of the summer season. So why they didn't just, put it in September, which previously was not seen as a powerhouse month, but that was coinciding with like the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. Again, by Paramount, a bad move. Why they didn't do that drives me nuts. But then again, I've already written about Star Trek on filmgamer.com, where I wrote, considering Chris Pine asked for a lot of money, again, a male female co star thing. Um, he said, why don't we make a smaller Star Trek movie? Well, the answer is because he demands a high fee, which I honestly do not think he deserves, but that's my own thing. Like, he commanded a high fee for Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, and I did not, I was in the minority on that. I did not think it was good, even though I like the filmmakers. And he gets paid very well. Good for him. He's a nice guy, but it's just male actor Hollywood demanding a big paycheck and not really earning it, in my opinion. He just doesn't have the movies to back that kind of thing up. Even though he's good in, Wonder Woman, and he's even good in A Wrinkle in Time, not a good movie, but he's in that. I wrote a treatment or an outline for Star Trek 4, where it would be more interestingly about the Enterprise crew when Kirk is not in it. Kirk is on home leave, essentially. And it basically says, what does the Enterprise crew do when their leader, who they've been following around, isn't with them to lead them through this next trek? And I also, have it in at the end for when we get in development on the movie, and Chris Pine says, wait, I'll do it for less money if it's the same amount of money, but I'm working less because it's fewer scenes and stuff. And it would loop together him and Chris Hemsworth, who long, long time ago in 2009, ancient history now, played his father. And that was a breakthrough for Chris Hemsworth. But because time travel was introduced as a paradox within that continuity of films, you could have basically Chris Pine talk to Chris Hemsworth, two Chris's talking together. Um, Always a good mix. You could have them together in a movie, just in one scene, as the emotional climax of the movie. And I think that would work. It just, even if it was a cameo in one scene, think about how Harrison Ford was handled in Blade Runner 2049. That's what I'm going for. So yeah, if you're interested, ask me about my Star Trek 4 outline, because Paramount needs help. Yeah, that was my Paramountain of drama that I wanted to sort through. So I guess the audience question that I wanted to ask was, what are the best shows that you haven't watched? Mad Men. I got 4 episodes in, bailed. It was too boring. Watched the Suitcase episode though, which was considered the best episode of the series. It was solid. The Wire, 4 seasons in and bailed, too boring. I did watch the last Avon Barksdale episode though, and the finale, but it's just very dialogue heavy. Um, it I appreciate its structure. Um, I learned about it in urban geography class. That's how structurally strong it stands up. Um, uh, of course, The Wire considered one of the best television shows of all time. It's funny how it's like HBO and AMC with The Wire and Mad Men, and then HBO with The Sopranos. Never started it. I will someday. Same. I'll finish The Wire and Mad Men. But I watched the Pine Barrens episode of The Sopranos on its own, and it was solid. But again, I'd pick up way more, because when I watched Breaking Bad, I watched the 1 minute episode, which is my favorite episode of the show, um, out of context, because it works well enough within its own context that you can watch that episode without knowing anything about the other show. And that's what I like to do when I can't get into a show. I'm like, X-Files, what's an episode where I don't have to know the overall mythology and I can just appreciate what's in front of me the way old TV used to be? That's what I do, and I recommended that viewing to my brother actually for shows, and I'll let you know if that worked for him or not. But yeah, in terms of movies, I've seen The Godfather, Lawrence of Arabia, Casablanca, Gone with the Wind. Those, even The Third Man, those are the kind of movies where people are like, all-time classic. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is another. Pulp Fiction is another. All-time classic movies that people watch and hold in high regard as like the best movies of all time. I've seen them all. I saw most of them when I was 12. So I saw them with the confidence of, oh, that's easy. They just pointed the camera there and did that thing. And maybe if I rewatch them now, I'd pick up on a lot more of the complexities. But that really developed my film taste, seeing Lawrence of Arabia and The Godfather, and Gone with the Wind, banging those out at 12 and being like, okay, well, now I know technically they're well done. Citizen Kane, of course, being the granddaddy of them all, but they're not for me, because I am of the thought that movies get better as they go on. Christopher Nolan said this when he won Best Director for Oppenheimer. Can you think of a time when people would watch a 3-hour drama about a nuclear physicist that's all mostly talking, but because of how film has advanced in its language and everything, Nolan made it exciting. You could not do that movie in like 1949 or something. And talk about 1955's Night of the Hunter, one of the well-regarded movies I saw last month. That's one of Martin Scorsese's favorites, and it's being remade by Scott Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill, who made The Black Phone an okay movie. So people are immediately like, "Oh, this is a mistake. You shouldn't do that." But like, I watched The Night of the Hunter, and it is stilted. There are some haunting images, but it's in black and white. I think that the color can be improved. You should always paint with a full palette. The sound can be improved. It's like muffled. The sound just isn't as good back then as it is now. And the special effects, you can really use those tools and storytelling techniques that have been developed over decades to make a better movie now, or tell the same subject matter better. It's just people like to stick to the favorites because they're proven. They're what's proven to people. So they like to hide behind what's established and really not go beyond that. And that's kind of what I found funny about the movie, the TV show Sugar, where apparently Sugar is like a film buff, but they're a film buff in a way people are on TV, where they have to always mention the movies that like everybody through the cultural pantheon has established are good movies. Like, oh, I quoted The Godfather on Suits, and nobody's ever like quoting Finding Nemo, you know. Like, you have to let go. Like, can you imagine if somebody like just put out a weird ass reference to a television show on a movie, um, or a movie on a television show, and it was just like a movie that they had only seen in like imagine if somebody like John Landis's The Stupids with Tom Arnold, and somebody quoted like "Release to Sender" or something. That would be hilarious. That would be great. But it's like, oh no, we gotta like, oh, Gone with the Wind, absolute classic. Oh, Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia, an absolute classic. Yeah, because Paul Thomas Anderson is an established like art house guy. Like, is anybody on a TV show going to be like, I saw The Empty Man and it was great? No, like nobody. When I talk to people, everybody has a weird film about themselves that like kind of only they like or respond to. Of like, hey, I thought it was good, you know. And I want to see more of that on television shows. So, you know, goodness is overrated in a way. I prefer entertainment. I'd rather watch something bad that was entertaining than something great which was boring. I know that's very low rent of me, but hey, I'm in it for the entertainment, right? So, anyways, for me, the big movies that I haven't seen yet that are well regarded are Metropolis from 1927 and It Happened One Night from 1939. Metropolis I have on Tubi. It Happened One Night I don't have access to and I'd like to see because it's one of the original rom coms. But yeah, that's all I'm going to cover today. Next time, I'll take on actor wages being stagnant and hear some more, fan feedback. So, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Film Gamer podcast. It was 25 overall episodes. And this is season 3, episode 18. Is it the finale? I don't know. Maybe it's the last, and I'll start anew in May, but we'll see. No, next time I'll come back with finished Fallout, more episodes of Sugar. Maybe I'll have a review or two written, probably just one. But around this time, I tend to like spring into action and write a lot more. And maybe I'll finally finish Affordable Space Adventures. And that would be really nice, wouldn't it? Yeah, but I'll tell you my Fallout more about how I got this Fallout T-shirt for the fascinating story that it is, and I'll have more to talk about. I know I missed the rundown of the box office from this last weekend, and the reason I didn't get into it more is because it was a boring weekend. It's also part in why I didn't release the numbers because Godzilla was number one, dropped 60%. It's a blockbuster. We knew that. Monkey Man came out, did less than okay, but it was made cheaply, so that did fine. The First Omen bombed because 20th Century Studios can't be marketed by Disney very well. And, a couple other movies stabilized, but they were already hit movies like Kung Fu Panda and Dune 2 that we already knew made money. And again, you had like kind of like an event film do a decent amount of money that you'll never see again. And there were no milestones crossed. So, next week I'll have more of an update because it's the weekend that Civil War is coming out, which I've been looking forward to. And I'll tell you when I decide not to go see a movie, even if I think it'll be okay. So that'll be next week, and or whenever the week after. It'll be sometime within the next 10 days. That's a promise. And until then, I thank you so much for listening to me. I have been growing. Impressions hit over 200 this week. So I'm really happy with it. And I'm slowly organizing into what this all should be. I got a link tree. Yeah, thank you again. And remind me next time to tell you about my letter to Tom Hanks. Okay, take care. Bye bye then. Thank you for listening. And I'll see you at the movies.